Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. This is the Group 5 Deep Dive. I'm Mike Calabrese, joined by my Action Network co-host Duck. We're going to get into everything under the sun here in the Group of 5 for week number 9. But before we get into that means our best bets, our G5 Moneyline Parlay, the best of the rest, his FCS leans, projections, big bets of the weekend, all of it. First, we're going to start with the sounding off segments, kind of cleanse the palate a little bit. You can go positively, you can go negatively. I certainly have something positive to say about the fighting Rainbow Warriors out there in the Pacific. But Doc, let's hear from you first. What are you sounding off on coming off of week 8?
Well, how about the UAB Blazers, this once proud program that was resurrected and then the legacy somewhat tarnished after the poor hire of Trent Dilfer and that decision by the administration? UAB validated that coaching really matters, and what Alex Mortensen was able to do with this bunch in this spot with a backup quarterback who didn't have any game experience, it was really, really impressive. It makes me wonder what could have been these last several years with UAB. And if they make the call, if they right the wrongs, could be special yet again once for Alabama Birmingham. So very, very impressive. Hats off to UAB. I was really impressed with what they did.
I couldn't be happier for this fan base. They deserved it. They immediately get off the mat, deliver a top 25 victory. Good things are around the corner. I wonder if this makes, the AD, the job search, I'm sure they hired a search firm to help out with this. Like, could Mortensen be the right fit? Does he stay as the offensive play caller? Like, there's lots of moving pieces here, but all of a sudden, just a quick injection of optimism in the Magic City. Couldn't be happier for them. I mean, I went off on Dilfer last week, and a lot of the UAB Twitter was following along and pumping their fist right there with me. So I'm glad that we can all cathartically get beyond, move past. It should be a dirty word in Birmingham. Let's not even say the D word anymore. We don't have to live through it anymore. And it's great to see them playing some winning football. And really, on top of everything else, it just adds more intrigue into the race in the American with Memphis dropping a game there. I hope that Lewis isn't out for the season or a prolonged period of time, because he certainly was a surprising addition at quarterback this year. Surprising in that I thought that there was going to be a downgrade at quarterback. He really played some great football for about 2 months. So I'm hoping that they don't lose him for the rest of the season and that Memphis is live in terms of fighting for a bid to the American Championship. All right, in terms of my sounding off, as I mentioned at the top, I'm going to talk Hawaii football. Timmy Chang started 13-25 straight up with his alma mater. Famously, 2-15 on the mainland in his first 3 years as the head coach of the Bows. The lay was starting to chafe a little bit. The Hawaiian honeymoon was over. It was win or walk here in 2025, and he's won. I believed in you, Timmy. We just cashed that win total over 5.5 in just 8 games. Not 1, but 2 road wins already on the season. And he's given us the Tokyo Toe. The kid should be in the Heisman conversation. He's 20 for 20 on his field goals this year, 8 for 8 from 40 plus the game winner against Stanford. Just everything that we could hope for and more. It used to be that break glass in case of gambling emergency after midnight. You're down 3 or 4 units, just put it on the Hawaii over. Well, for years, their offense was stuck in the mud. They couldn't paddle the boat in the right direction. But now all of a sudden, they're scoring a lot of points. The midnight games are fun if you're able to pay for the pay-per-view. So I just want to say thank you to Timmy for bringing back the run and shoot to its glory. And college football needed this, and you delivered it. So that's my sounding off there, keeping it very positive this week after going so hard after that former coach at UAB last week. All right, before we get into the best bets, let's toss over for Stuckey for a quick word from DraftKings.
The Big Bets on Campus podcast is sponsored by DraftKings Sportsbook. And in partnership with DraftKings, BBOC listeners get a great new offer. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 back in bonus bets if your bet wins, and 3 months of NBA League Pass. Stay in on the action and use your bonus bets on DraftKings same game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. To get started, use promo code BBOC when signing up with DraftKings. That's code BBOC when signing up with DraftKings for 3 months of NBA League Pass and $300 back if your first bet wins. The crown is yours.
Thanks, Ducky. Now let's get into our best bets for this week. A reminder, if you'd like to tail some of the bets that we discuss in today's episode, find the quick slip link in the episode and podcast description, or visit actionnetwork.com/betnow. Or even better, sign up for Action Pro, where you'll get immediate notifications anytime an Action Network expert logs a bet. So that means Stucky, Colin Wilson, Duck, myself, anytime we put a bet in there, you're going to be the first to know. So it's the best bets at the best prices. Right now, you can use promo code BBOC20 when signing up for $20 off an annual subscription. So if you don't have Action Pro yet, use code BBOC20 to get on board. All right, here we go. Best bets for week number 9. Duck, I'd like to kick it to you first with a team that, at least in my opinion, has exceeded all offensive expectations here in 2025. I think maybe in the first couple of weeks of the season, we were waiting for the air to come out of the balloon as it related to UConn Husky football, but it seems as though Fignano is for real. They have a 3-headed monster when you combine him with Edwards out of the backfield and Skylar Bell on the perimeter, and you like them laying 10 here in week 9. Walk me through the rationale.
Yeah, I mean, UConn has just been playing absolutely excellent football this season. They're legitimately a couple of plays away from being undefeated in a close loss against Syracuse in a game they had firmly in hand, and then a 3-point loss against the Delaware Blue Hens. And after the loss to Syracuse, they had kind of a hangover spot there where they didn't play very well against Delaware. I think they avoid that hangover spot here after the big win against Boston College. And they're going to significantly outclass the Rice Owls this week. Rice has not been good offensively for most of the season. The Owls averaging just 16 points per game against FBS competition, just 3.8 yards per carry on the ground this year, and just 3 rushing touchdowns the last 3 weeks. Rice can't throw the ball, and that's the concern I have from this group playing from behind. 135th in pass play success rate, 112th in EPA per pass offensively are the Rice Owls. This offense is really built like a service academy. We've talked about it throughout the entire season. But if you look at what we've seen from all the other service academies, it has been the development of a passing attack. Rice does not have that yet, and the result has been real struggle on third and medium or worse. They've been in it a ton this year. UConn creates their fair share of defensive havoc. This group has 50 tackles for loss and 26 sacks this season. Rice has allowed 60 negative plays against them this year, and they're just not successful enough to consistently stack positive plays together to move the ball down the field to score to keep up. Joey Fagnano, back-to-back games of 70% completion percentage, 360 passing yards in each game, 4 touchdowns without an interception in each game. And Rice has been shredded through the air the last 3 weeks, giving up over 10 yards per attempt over the last 3 games. Rice cannot stop UConn, and they're not going to be able to keep up. Go find the flat 10. It's out there. UConn minus 10.
Yeah, I think when you talk about service academy football, I think the college football world, particularly the betting universe, has been spoiled in the last 2 years. Whether it's the traditional service academies or a Vanderbilt with Diego Pavi running things, all of a sudden your mind starts to click into you're controlling the football, you're efficient, you can play keep away, you're really good as a dog. Georgia Tech fits that mold as well in the past 2 seasons under Brent Key. But just because you're running a system that can play keep away doesn't automatically mean that you are efficient, nor do you have quality quarterback play. And with all the positivity we had for Scott Abel in year 1 in the preseason, and we talked about this rebuild, it was kind of a perfect marriage between a coach that made, lemonade out of lemons at Davidson without scholarships and all these other things. We still have concerns which who's going to be the quarterback, where the explosive play is going to come from. Just assuming at some point it would materialize, and it hasn't. Have you seen anything else in the film that you've broken down? I know that both of us have watched way more Rice football than should be legal at this point in the season, considering how poor they've been. But do you have any insight into what it would take for them to get it together down the stretch or maybe into 2026?
Well, I mean, the rest of this year, it's going to take absolutely exquisite execution. It's going to take perfect execution really on each play because they just don't have the prowess passing the football, and they're not converting third down at a high enough rate to consistently stay on the field. And they've gone for it a little bit on fourth down, kind of come up snake eyes. So it hasn't been really the operation that we would have hoped as the competition has stiffened. And their last time out against UTSA, it was just a disaster. They got blitzed from the jump in that one. And just hard when you don't have all the ammunition and you don't have all the pieces. and you play the style of football that really requires you to be in front or tied. Otherwise, this offense really, really struggles. So I think you're going to have excellent special teams, which they do not have. I think the defense is really going to have to come up big, which I don't still think they have the athletes in the secondary to be able to pin down this UConn group. And if you look at what's coming next, Memphis, a resurgent UAB, North Texas, and South Florida, it's going to be tough sledding the rest of the way for the Owls.
For my best bet here, I'm going to go with the team that I think the market is overcorrected on as a favorite, and that is Buffalo. They're laying 9.5 at home against Akron. I'm going to lay the points here with the Bulls. And hold on, if you're already pulling away from me, I can feel that in the gambling universe. Let's just talk through what we know. They're 0-3 against the spread as favorites in MAC play. They haven't come close to covering as heavy favorites yet. They won by 3 against Kent as 24-point home favorites. They won by 1 against Eastern as 10-point favorites. And then last week, they needed a come-from-behind victory over UMass to win by 7 in a game in which they were laying 16. The common factor, though, in those 3 matchups, at least from an against the spread perspective, is that Buffalo lost the turnover battle in all 3 matchups. But the UMass performance, I think, was the one that has really put a lot of noise into their stats and at least their performance against the spread. Because not only did they lose the turnover battle there, they also got stopped on a 4th down at the UMass 35. They gave up a fluky 90-yard rushing touchdown and an insane 77-yard passing touchdown that included a scramble, a sidearm throw, and not 1, not 2, but 3 missed tackles from a slow tight end to get to the end zone. It was a crazy play for a team that is top 20 in tackling per PFF. They outgained UMass in that game by 169 yards. So to me, what that says is if they played the game again immediately, they lined up the next day, they're going to come a lot closer to covering that than a game in which they had to steal it in the 4th quarter. Now, Akron, on the other side of things, they've lost 3 MAC games by 42, 13, and 14. They can't stop the run at all. They're letting opposing lines get to the second level, start to chip up to those linebackers. And because of that, they're 109th in line yards. I think there's going to be a lot of success on the table for this Buffalo run game. And in terms of the big plays that Akron's allowing as well, 100th in quality drives and also outside the top 100 in big plays allowed. So you can move the ball methodically if you want to. You can hit the big plays all at once. And I think that's music to the ears of this Buffalo coaching staff who's really looking for Taquan Roberson to take over. Because ever since he came back from that injury, he was in a walking boot. He spent more time in the pocket. And what's interesting is because he's not bailing from the pocket quite as quickly as he was earlier in the season, he's starting to go off a little bit. 675 yards through the air and 5 passing touchdowns in his last 2 games alone. So I think what they're going to have consistently on the ground and then adding in what he's been able to develop in terms of a rhythm through the air, I think this Buffalo offense is due for a big day. Buffalo hammered Akron on the road last year. I think this is another element that is leading this to be a single-digit game below that key number of 10. They opened up a 38-7 lead against Akron last year, but then basically coasted and they won 41-30. So I think in terms of the historics and the comps that they're pulling, they're saying they're not covering big numbers this year. And look at Akron last year. They were a game, underdog against them for 4 quarters. Not really. So in my opinion, I think this is going to be a situation where the numbers suppressed by some weird fluky play, some turnover regression that I think is due to go the Bulls' way. I know that we got burned with them last week, but I am confident in Pete Lembo in this situation to lay the hammer and to win this one going away. All the things I listed out, any hesitation, I know that sometimes you get that bet regret or a team ends up in podcast prison for you. What are your thoughts on this one, Duck?
I still believe what we have adhered to in the preseason in our research, and that is that Buffalo has an elite MAC defense, and despite the offensive struggles and the fact that they haven't been covering spreads, Buffalo still grades out as the 2nd best defensive unit in the MAC per PFF. They're 3rd in the run defense. They're 3rd in overall tackling, 2nd in pass rush, 2nd in overall coverage. This is an elite MAC defense, and they're going to peak at the right time. Buffalo is my preseason pick to win the MAC. Everything's right in front of them with Pete Lembo in this group. It has not looked very good this season offensively, especially against inferior competition, but I definitely think that there's a chance that this team can start to peak at the right time. And you look at Akron, they have started to find something a little bit offensively, but they did that against Ball State and Central Michigan, 2 defenses that don't rate nearly as highly as Buffalo's. I think Buffalo rights the ship at home. This is a play I like.
We got 2 more best bets. Both are overs coming out of the Fun Belt. Let's start with yours, Georgia Southern against Arkansas State. I mean, the defenses are clearly not there. Arkansas State is kind of one of those teams that can seesaw a bit in terms of offensive efficiency. They can play in shootouts, and also they can have a random stinker come out from time to time. So this number in the low 60s at 62.5 as of recording, what are your thoughts on this one between the Red Wolves and the Eagles?
Well, I mean, what you have here is two of the worst rated defenses in the conference, and the numbers are staggering. Georgia Southern is the worst rated run defense in the belt. Arkansas State is the 11th worst. Georgia Southern has the worst rated pass rush in the conference. Arkansas State is 12th worst. Arkansas State has the 12th worst coverage unit grades per PFF. Georgia Southern is 9th. And then Georgia Southern defensively, 136th in defensive success rate, 134th in defensive havoc, 129th in finishing drives. And Arkansas State is just as bad in all three of those metrics. So these teams are giving up nearly 7 yards per play and over 8 yards per pass attempt against them. I fully expect Arkansas State to get the ground game going with Jalen Rayner and Devin Spencer. I would expect a big passing day from J.C. French. He's disappointed this season for Georgia Southern. It's been a lot of short stuff. It's been a lot of dink and dunk. But I think the Eagles can shred Arkansas State through the air. We should have plenty of scoring opportunities in this one. I just don't trust either one of these porous defenses to be able to necessitate stops, to get any stops on third down. They're both giving up third down at a very, very high rate. Both red zone defenses are very, very bad. Should be plenty of points in this one, so I'm going over 62.5.
Yeah, J.C. French can also be an overbetter's best friend because he's thrown, I want to say, let me look it up here. I want to say it's 17 interceptions in the last year and a half. So he's more than happy to serve up a pick six, in the event that there's a lull in the scoring in the second half, third quarter, something like that. All of a sudden, things can pick up in a single play. So yes, the run defenses are so weak, you get explosives on any handoff. And at least from a turnover perspective, I kind of like the boomer bust nature that French as a gunslinger gives you in terms of an over. All right, I teased it. We got two overs here out of the belt. I like App State Old Dominion over 62. For starters, these are the two fastest teams in the Sun Belt in terms of tempo, and two of the fastest teams, by definition, in all of G5 football in terms of seconds between plays. They're both top 25. J.J. Cole, the 6'7", 240-pound monster quarterback for App State, has really opened things up now that he sees the starting job. 78 points in the past two games as their QB1. And, I mean, with him surging, I also look across to this Old Dominion defense, which has been imploding. They've allowed, ready for this, 111 points in the last two games. And the reasons are simple. They can't tackle, they can't rush the passer. So if you have a quality quarterback, you can score 50 points against this Monarch defense. When you look at their issues with tackling as well, 17 missed tackles against Marshall, 16 against James Madison, a James Madison offense that certainly did not impress us for most of the season. All of a sudden they came alive. Every single thing worked. The run game, the pass game, whether it was making plays happen from the pocket or extending and being creative outside the pocket, everything worked for the Dukes in that game. And then when Old Dominion has the ball, as I like to say, it's 2 to tango on a total. And with an over like this, you need at least one of these teams to hit up into the high 30s, low 40s. ODU is capable of that with Colton Joseph as the quarterback. He's 22nd in QBR in the entire country. He's got 5 games with 50 rushing yards or more already on the season. And when he has time to read a defense, when he's not under duress, he knows where to go with the football, which is, a credit to this coaching staff and his maturation from last year, where basically he was a one-read kind of quarterback and then he'd run the ball. That's not the case this year. You look at his numbers when he has a clean pocket, he's able to push the ball downfield and get explosives. His ADOT from a clean pocket is 13.6, which is translated to 15 passing touchdowns, completed 2/3 of his passes from the clean pocket with 14 big-time throws. Only one quarterback in the entire country, Walker Egan from San Jose State, has more big-time throws than Joseph. So just give you a feel for what you're going to get when you get into an Old Dominion over. This guy is going to try to make those highlight reel throws that can turn, what would have been a check down for 7 or 8 yards into a 40-yard touchdown. Now, App State is miles away from the stingy defense that used to keep them at the top of the belt. They're 111th in coverage. They're a matching 111th in tackling per PFF, and they've already given up 23 pass plays of 20 yards or more this season, which is 93rd nationally. I trust these quarterbacks to put up monster numbers. I think this potentially could be a huge shootout that gets played close to the 80s. We got perfect fall weather on tap in this game as well on Saturday in Norfolk. So there's no reason for me to go under in this one. I'm going to ride the wave of Old Dominion overs until the wheels fall off. What are your thoughts on this one for two offenses that at least, halfway through last season, we weren't exactly sure who they were in terms of their identity. You move the calendar forward 1 year, Joseph has jumped off the page, and a new quarterback in for App State seems to be making all the difference.
Yeah, and it's real interesting to see how Old Dominion's defense has completely disintegrated over the last couple of weeks, and really two disappointing spots for them. The first one, you almost saw that they rolled in there and showed up and thought they would just win just by getting off the bus. Didn't play out that way against Marshall. And then last week, they were trading score for score against JMU. And man, the momentum just shifted, and they couldn't ever sustain any drives outside of the explosive touchdowns. But I really like Colton Joseph. I like what he's done this season. I like how he's maturing as a passer. I think that they'll have a ton of success at home offensively against an App State defense that I don't trust to get any stops. I don't trust them to get off the field consistently. They've been shredded through the air this season. They were just shredded by Coastal Carolina. My goodness, that tells you a lot about what you need to know. The propensity for App State to play in these higher scoring games with the style of offense that they run leads me to believe we'll have a ton of possessions. We should have plenty of red zone opportunities here, so this is another one I do like.
Now we turn to your 4-minute offense. This one was easy. Picking out this week, we're going to go to the American South Florida against Memphis. Let's start right off the bat talking about the quarterback situation with the Tigers, because that certainly takes the luster off this matchup. But with this coaching staff, being able to do so much in terms of their offensive identity, being able to hybrid and adjust from a rush-oriented offense to more of a passing attack. What do you think they do in terms of quarterback play and their run-pass mix? And do you think they're drawing dead right away against a South Florida front that has proven to be such absolutely the class of the American, if not really like a top 25 defensive line? They focused on that in the portal and NIL, and those big bodies have certainly given them an advantage, not just in their upset of the Florida Gators and Boise State, but really anybody coming at them in the American.
Yeah, it's been really impressive. This was setting up to be quite the showdown in the AAC before Memphis completely laid an egg in the battle for the bones last week, losing outright as 23-point favorites. But man, this was going to be quite the showdown. The real question is the health of Brendan Lewis. Is he going to play? The reports are from Ryan Silverfield day to day, but he also said that all three quarterbacks could play in this one. So he really didn't give a tremendous amount of insight, and I would want to know that here before I make a play on this one. You look at Memphis's defense, good against the run this season, allowing just 3.5 yards per carry on the ground. Really, it was only UAB that has been able to gash this defense on the ground. They're 9th in EPA per rush allowed this season, 29th in rush play success rate. South Florida's offense is run-oriented, despite what you might think. They are at their best when they get the ground game going and they gash you through the middle, and then they throw the pass over the top outside of that. And they run this slow, kind of not really a Wake Forest slow mesh, but it's kind of a slow developing play action with Byron Brown. And that's when the receivers create space. They get the seam routes going. They throw it over the top of the linebackers who creep up. Well, be interested to see if they could get that ground game going against Memphis, so then that pass explosivity is something that's realized. Memphis, the pass rush is struggling. Only 2 sacks this last 4 weeks for the Memphis defense. They can't get pressure, but they still are creating negative plays on the ground in recent weeks. Really, the key for this defense is going to be eliminating or limiting the explosive plays from South Florida's offense. We've seen South Florida stall out at times this season where they go several possessions where they can't get a first down. It's punt, 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 punt. And they struggle at times to move the ball if they're not hitting the explosives. South Florida has feasted on some of the worst defenses in the conference, and to their credit, they shredded them. So the lights were a little too bright for North Texas when they played against the Mean Green a couple of weeks back, and that game kind of snowballed on them. So it's just kind of the way that one went. Defensively, Todd Orlando, I think, has done an exceptional job with South Florida. A defense that was such a liability at times in prior seasons. 3.3 yards per carry on the ground this year. Only Miami has really been able to break through against the Bulls' front seven, as all other opponents have rushed for less than 133 yards on the Bulls this year. The secondary have been ball hawks, 10 interceptions for South Florida, and I just don't think Memphis will really have answers to move it through the air, especially if they're on a backup quarterback. Memphis did win this game last year 21-3, and they're at least familiar with the offensive scheme, having seen it before. And so my initial inclination here would be to lean under in this one with a total of 63.5, 64. I would see this one play to the under. I think Memphis is going to try to establish the run. I don't know how much confidence they'll have with a backup quarterback throwing it around here. And it's so hard to really definitively say what's going to happen without knowing who's going to be under center for Memphis. So I want to know that. I think South Florida, if they can get the ground game humming, and it could be a long day for Memphis if they get some of that pass play explosivity with the receivers. Receivers have had a ton of drops too, so I have to imagine that overcorrects itself and they hang on to the ball this time around. But no play here. I lean under. What do you think about this one, Breezy?
Yeah, I need to wait to see the exact quarterback situation. My feeling, seeing the injury, seeing him not return to the game, I think it's more wishful thinking, optimistic, coach speak, and also making it difficult for the South Florida coaching staff to have to prepare for multiple quarterbacks. I think that's totally within bounds. I don't think there's anything cheap about it. It's a bit of gamesmanship. He's also, behind the eight ball, not having a starting quarterback. If that's the case, this game is a pass for me. I think it's South Florida could end up, winning going away. But I really don't have a feel if I don't know what I'm getting from the Memphis offense. So I agree with you. It is a marquee game that's lost its luster because of the upset and the battle for the bones and this quarterback uncertainty. I'm still going to watch it. I think there's an opportunity for South Florida to kind of prove under Golish that they're not just big game hunters. They're also ruthless. They have a team that's down, but clearly they can change their whole season with an upset win here. Do they go for the jugular? Do they try to win this game in the first 20 minutes and just hit them with haymakers and then kind of coast from there? That would signal to me that they're really ready to march all the way to the American Championship game. If they play with their food a little bit, which, it's happened to a lot of good G5 teams over the years, I think this could be, kind of a dicey game for them in the second half. I wouldn't be surprised to see either game script play out. So I'm going to keep my money on the sideline. All right, out of the 4-minute offense, we transition now into our G5 Underdog Moneyline Parlay presented by DraftKings. I'm shooting for the moon here, so let's start with yours first, Duck. The Golden Hurricane. They are 2-1 hosting Temple in Tulsa. Listen, I made some notes early in the preseason where I said I thought that Trey Lamb was not quite the right hire. I thought that he was a little bit young. I thought it would have made more sense for him to work his way up the FCS ladder, maybe be a coordinator at the FBS level. All that being said, yes, they are 0-4 in the American. They've lost to 4 really good American teams. They're all bowl teams. They're all, with the exception of, I want to say East Carolina, they're all going to be in the mix to play for the American Championship. So the fact that they lost those 4, it's no scarlet letter on this Tulsa team or their staff. They did beat Oklahoma State. That was a nice emotional win. But when I peek over, the horizon and look at the rest of the schedule, they could win a lot of games down the stretch here in the American, and I think you're going to get really good prices on them, at least in the next 2 weeks, to do so. So let's start here, a long road trip for Temple. They're just about a touchdown favorite in this game. Talk me through why you like Tulsa and what you're hoping to see for them to finally put together 4 quarters of really good football in, I would say, the past month.
Well, to start, I have this game power rated closer to a pick. And with where this line is at, they're suggesting that Temple is 9 points better on a neutral. I'm just not so sure about that. I do acknowledge that Temple has been significantly better than anticipated this season. And in recent weeks, they beat UTSA and played Navy really, really tough. But as you mentioned, Tulsa's been through the conference gauntlet this season. Navy, Tulane, Memphis, and East Carolina. Tulsa's got a strong coverage unit that grades out as the second best in the American Conference per PFF, along with the third best pass rush, and I think that they can put a little pressure on Evan Simon and this Temple's passing attack. Tulsa's got 16 sacks, 38 tackles for loss this season, and for as bad as some of the metrics are, again, they've played some of the better offenses in this league, but the defense has been good on early downs. They're 8th in EPA per rush, 15th in rush play success rate. I think that they can provide a little bit of resistance here at home. Offensively, I think Tulsa can move the ball here. Temple gives up 5 yards per carry on the ground and has been shredded in 4 of the last 5 games. Baylor Hayes is starting to figure some things out in the pass game. Really the critical step for me, the key that unlocks, this is a lesser known name, but Zion Steptoe is a complete difference maker in the slot. And if they can get him going and get him the ball in space, he's very, very elusive. I think that it's going to look a little better of an operation for Tulsa this week at home. And I think they have a chance to win this game on the field. So Tulsa on the money line is where I'm going.
Now this Moneyline parlay, putting these two underdogs together, it's going to pay out 17-1. That's correct, 17-1. You're probably wondering, how do we make that math work? FAU, 5-1 to upset the Navy midshipmen in Annapolis. I'm going to make the case here. This is my biggest swing of the entire season. Navy is going to move the football. There's no stopping this rushing attack. They're going to hit 7 or 8 yards per carry on the ground in this game. I'm expecting that. But at some point, something has to give with Navy in close games and when it comes to turnovers. Let's go through their close game resume thus far. An 8-point win over Rice. We don't think Rice is very good. A 3-point win over Air Force. Air Force has no defense. And a 1-point win over Temple. Those teams are collectively 8-11 straight up, and all of them really struggle to contain the run. Air Force was 110th, Temple 108th against the run. So FAU checking in at 111th isn't a deal breaker for me. We know that Navy is going to gobble up yardage, but it comes down to turnover luck. Navy has lost all of 5 turnovers this season in 6 games, but here's the thing. They fumbled it 9 times. They've only lost 2 of those fumbles. That's insanely lucky to be landing on 78% of your fumbles when they hit the turf. FAU, by the way, dead last in turnover margin in the entire country. The turnover regression gods, if you're listening, give me a bounce. Give me 1 bounce in this game. Because if FAU does get lucky and they're at even or plus in the turnover margin here, they have the passing attack to carve up this Navy secondary. They throw, and they throw some more. They're 4th in passing yards per game. No one attempts more passes per game in the entire country than FAU. And the Middies pass defense, 117th in coverage, 114th in pass D success rate, and 126th in passes defended. So they're not active with their hands. They're not closing down on balls. They are just leaving people wide open. So if you want to look for some comps, Evan Simon, 25 for 36, 345, and a touchdown, only sacked once by this Navy pass rush. They're what they send in terms of 3 and 4 man rushes. They are just not getting home. Jalen Kidna, 22 for 32, 304 yards, 2 touchdowns. They did pick him twice, and that swung the game in the second half, but they only sacked him once. I think Veldkamp can stand in the pocket and carve these guys up. And one last thing from a situational angle. Who was on deck for Navy? North Texas, Notre Dame, South Florida, Memphis. If they go 3-1 in that stretch and win the American title game, they're probably in the playoff. How is it not on their minds as an undefeated team on what's ahead to look over this FAU team? This is the look-ahead spot. I know that service academies are usually buttoned up and they wake up at 4:45 in the morning and they're disciplined. They go station to station. But if you want to grab a big upset on this season, I think I've seen crazier things than this because the weaknesses that the Navy defense presents, and then on the other side of it, all these close games that they've been in, I think indicates that they are not as good as a 6-0 undefeated record would indicate. 5-1, I'm willing to take a big swing here. I know it's been an underwhelming season for Kitley and this FAU team, but they've shown signs of life from time to time. I think they finally put it all together and catch a few breaks. What do you think about this at this price point? Granted, this is not a coin flip by any stretch, but I think this pricing is way off at 5-1. I would play it anywhere north of plus 350.
Well, for sure, Navy has had a propensity to play close games, and they have performed poorly against inferior competition relative to the spread, beating Temple, as you said, by 1, playing close against Air Force, and even Rice for that matter. And they were down 14-0 against Tulsa before rallying the troops in the second half to make that margin a little bit wider than what that game played to as far as competitiveness is concerned. Yeah, there's a chance for Florida Atlantic. They really have got to be crisp in their execution. We've seen such flippant use of 4th down conversions from Zach Kitley, and they seem to go for it really whenever they want to, whether it makes sense or not. And so they're going to have to really be careful with how they decide to go for those fourth down conversions and when to punt. I think they're going to have to force Navy to make a mistake offensively, maybe create a turnover or two, maybe get a special teams play. We just don't see Navy blow these teams out, and the style of play that they operate with offensively, the games are just generally tight and close. They don't have a lot of interest in punching in that last score. So certainly FAU would be appetizing against the number with the 15.5. And you know what? I think if you can go in there and throw a few rainbow bomb shots over the Navy defense, they have had this sort of susceptibility to give it up off or defensively through the air. And so, yeah, I mean, any time that you have a skilled passing attack and solid receivers on the outside and in the slot like Messer, you have a chance to move the ball and find yourself in areas where you can score. Now, the other thing that you'll need to have is you'll need to have good red zone execution for FAU, and it's just not something we've had this year for the Owls. They've had far too many empty red zone trips. But if they get that cleaned up and they can turn those trips inside the 20 into pay dirt, then yeah, I'd give them a chance for sure.
All right, that's it for our Moneyline Parlay presented by DraftKings. You're going to want to check out the Parlay Express account in the free award-winning Action Network app, where you'll be seeing us place this G5 Moneyline Parlay. You're also going to find a bunch of other long shot bets and parlays there as well. You can also find the quick slip link in the podcast and video description, or visit actionnetwork.com/bet now to find and tail some of the bets we've discussed thus far, including our G5 Moneyline Parlay. All right, with that, we are on to Duck's 2-minute offense, which means he's dusting off all of his FCS plays. We're going to start with St. Francis against Bobby Moe, and you're predicting a rock fight between these two. Walk me through the under and how low would you go before there's a cutoff?
I mean, there may be no more slow-burning grinder in the NEC this season than what we get this weekend between SFPA and Robert Morris. St. Francis is averaging 9 points per game this season, Bobby Moe 12. St. Francis, 239 total yards per game and just 12 first downs per game this season. This team does not have an explosive rushing play to their credit all year, not one. The last 5 Robert Morris games have gone under this projected total of 42.5. And the run-heavy nature of Robert Morris will keep possession of the ball against the St. Francis defense that has the worst run grades in the conference and is also the worst tackling team. Each of these teams is averaging 55 plays per game. And with a significant lack of explosivity, we are going to need exceptional execution and nearly 100% touchdown percentage in the red zone in order to get this one over the total. I project this at 42.5. I'd play it all the way down to 41 under in this game. Next, we're going to Lehigh. Lehigh off the bye week, and you're getting to the point in the season where margin of victory really matters to the playoff committee. And Lehigh is playing for a top seed and an easier path in the FCS playoffs. You're not going to line up and run the ball here against Lehigh. The Mountain Hawks are giving up just 2.5 yards per carry on the ground this season and 71 rushing yards per game. This is a far cry from the old Fordham offenses that we're used to seeing, and the offensive line is set to get eaten alive in the trenches here by Lehigh. 25 sacks given up by Fordham, 53 tackles for loss surrendered this season, and Lehigh thrives at creating pressure defensively and negative plays in the backfield. Fordham's defense is really bad, giving up 460 yards per game. Lehigh's going to gash these guys on the grounds and will absolutely beat the pants off this team. I've got this projected at 21.5. I'd lay up to 23.5. Next one we're going to is Monmouth. Monmouth has scored 42 points or more in every game against FCS competition this season, and the Hawks now line up against a team that's allowing 6.5 yards per play and 408 yards per game, as this Hampton Pirate defense is just very, very leaky. 30 of 31 red zone trips have resulted in scores, and this Hampton team just gave up 49 first half points last week to Villanova. Hampton is the second worst tackling team in the CAA per PFF and possesses absolutely no pass rush to speak of whatsoever. Derek Robertson for Monmouth, 27 touchdown passes this season while completing 72%. 6 receivers for Monmouth have at least 20 catches this season. The defense for Monmouth is not a good tackling group, and the Hawks do grade out as a struggling coverage unit in the CAA, but Hampton cannot throw the ball here. The Pirates have played 3 other terrible secondaries in CAA play in Campbell, Villanova, and North Carolina A&T. 35 for 64 combined in the 3 games for 378 total passing yards against the 3 worst secondaries in the CAA. They're not going to be able to keep up here. Monmouth will score 45 or 48 again and cover this number. I have it projected at 18. I'd lay up to 21.
All right, time for my 2-minute offense. Going to start in the MAC, Western Michigan, traveling to Oxford to take on the Red Hawks of Miami of Ohio. They're a short favorite, laying 1.5 at home. I'll lay it. We warned everybody that Miami would turn it around. They don't really care all that much about their non-conference slate, but they still should have upset UNLV. They had bad injury luck, just bad luck in general, in a 41-38 loss. Since then, 4 straight wins, all 4 by double digits. Defense stuffed NIU and Akron into a locker, and the offense came alive against Eastern Michigan, dropping 44 points on the Eagles. They're showing off their depth, too. They lose Kenny Tracy for the year, but Jordan Brunson comes in, a career backup. He's rolled for 267 rushing yards in the past 3 games. The offensive line is playing better. It's one of the best run blocking units in the MAC, 36th in line yards. And DeQuan Finn is now pitching in as that true dual threat in the running game, 213 yards and 2 rushing scores in MAC play. I still have my doubts about this Western Michigan offense, mainly because of the schedule. Rhode Island, UMass, Ball State, that's basically tailor-made to throw off some of their season-long stats. But even with that cupcake trio now behind them, they're still 111th in rush EPA, 118th in passing success rate, and 127th in big play rate on offense. They haven't been in a real hole since they played those Big Ten teams in Michigan State and Illinois earlier in the season. I think it's going to be a bit of a shock to the system for them, and we're going to finally see what they're made of, which I believe is a below-average MAC offense against the best coach in the MAC and a quarterback with the highest upside in the conference. So I'll go with Miami as a short favorite. Then I'm looking for a team total here, going over 29 with Utah State. 4 of the Aggies' last 5 games, they've hit 30 points. They have balance with Barnes and Davis on the ground. They get big play upside when Barnes pushes the ball downfield. They're all the way up to 11th in big play rate in the entire country, and Barnes has smoothed over the fact that their offensive line isn't very good. You can fall in love with this offense as long as you're okay with a bit of chaos, a bit of negative plays, because this New Mexico defense is going to go boom or bust. They're going to get some sacks. They're going to get home and bring Barnes down in the backfield, but they're also going to give up home run plays on the other side of things. They're 49th in sacks, but 132nd in havoc, and that's the issue here. I think Barnes is going to be able to handle the pressure. He'll still get sacked 2 or 3 times in this game, but he's going to stand in, he's going to take the hits. And essentially, when you look at it, during this high-scoring run, 38 points per game across the last 5, he's taken 12 sacks. So it hasn't stopped them from putting points on the board. For some offenses, that's too much to overcome. That's not Utah State. This is a guy who's, rugged. He's tough. He's going to stand in, deliver for me. So I'm going to go over the number of 29 against the Lobos. And I'm going to finish off with a double dip, kind of fading the defenses from the land of enchantment. I'm going to go Missouri State over on their team total, 26.5. They're taking on New Mexico State. Jacob Clark, I think it should be a welcome back situation. That's the buzz, at least from what I'm hearing. If not, it's Deuce Bailey, and the kid looked pretty good in relief of Clark against Middle Tennessee. But if it is Clark, I think this kid took all of his lumps, the Missouri offense as well, early in the season in those paycheck games, USC, SMU. But then when he finally got an opportunity to play against teams on an even playing field, 359 yards through the air, 3 scores against Marshall. He helped the offense drop 42 points on UT Martin, and then he got hurt. Well, now he's drawn this New Mexico State defense, and the Aggies are pitiful. They let La Tech score 49. New Mexico scored 38. Liberty scored 30. Everyone is moving the football against the Aggies this season, and everyone can throw on them in particular. 4 of their 5 starting defensive backs are 6 feet or shorter, and Missouri State has some physical receivers like Tristan Gardner, James Blackstrain, who's now healthy. I think they're going to be able to win some of those jump balls and make either Clark or Bailey look good in this game. This was a very high-flying, high-scoring offense at the FCS ranks last year for Missouri State when Clark was healthy. So I think his return unlocks the upside of this offense. And one last piece to this puzzle, Aggie Memorial Stadium, outside of the Rio Grande rivalry, the home advantage is non-existent. Everybody comes in and does whatever they want against New Mexico State now that Diego Pavia is long gone and playing the hits in Nashville. So I don't think you're going to have to sweat this roadie. I think Missouri State is primed for a breakout game offensively, and they get it done there. Any of those 3 plays pique your interest, Duck?
Well, Miami of Ohio is doing what Miami of Ohio does. Chuck Martin scraps the non-conference. He doesn't care about it nearly as much as other teams in the MAC. He's trying to prepare his team for MAC play, and that's exactly what they've gone out and done with victories over Northern Illinois, Akron, and Eastern Michigan. So team looks ready to go. I think this is going to be a real low scoring game. This is going to be a kind of a 10-yard war type of game where it's going to be hard to put drives together. It's going to be hard to get a lot of explosive plays against the opposing defenses. But I mean, Miami of Ohio is not a team I really am looking to bet against right now, especially in league play when they're hitting their stride. So that's one that I definitely like. Utah State, I mean, we've talked about it before, but I just don't believe that this New Mexico defense is what we saw it to be, specifically in that Friday night primetime game when they thrashed UCLA, a team that had quit. And the defense has been pretty leaky in recent games. They were shredded through the air by New Mexico State. They gave up a ton of passing yards against San Jose State. They just looked completely lost on the blue turf at Boise a couple of weeks ago. And they struggled to put away Nevada last week, so I think Utah State should have some success there. Broncos' return to the land of enchantment will be an interesting dynamic there for him to go back to where he spent 1 year at New Mexico last season. I would believe that game should be back and forth. Utah State plays in high-scoring affairs, and I think their offense should look a lot better than it did the last time they hit the road and went to the island.
Let's close out this episode with our Tug-Of-War that's been going on this entire season. It started at the 50 for those of you listening in for the first time. If you get a pick right, just a head-to-head minus 110. You're moving the ball 10 yards closer to your opponent's end zone. One of us hopefully gets into the end zone at the end of the season. At this point, I'm starting to roll now. I'm at Ducks 15. So we're picking an SEC battle. We're talking Ole Miss against Oklahoma. Which side do you like, Duck?
I'm going to lay it with Oklahoma minus 4.5 for this Tug-Of-War. Oklahoma legitimately has potentially the best defensive unit in the entire country, and they're buttoned up at all three levels. PFF grades them as third overall best defense in the conference in the SEC, third best pass rushing grades, fourth best coverage unit. Oklahoma is third nationally in defensive success rate, seventh in defensive finishing drives. Count them up on your hand. 4 total red zone touchdowns surrendered this season for Oklahoma. 28 sacks registered, 75 tackles for loss this season. They're seventh in early down success. Oklahoma is first nationally in pass play success rate, allowing only 25% of their third down attempts against them to be converted successfully. 2.5 yards per carry on the ground and 81 rushing yards per game given up, and just 11 first downs per game given up on average. Nobody has been able to move the ball on these guys. The defense is flat out nasty. We've seen the Ole Miss offense struggle in 2 of the last 3 weeks against Wazoo and LSU specifically. These guys are coming after Trinidad and are going to make life hell for him in the backfield and for this Ole Miss offense. I fully expect another low scoring game. Oklahoma's been very comfortable in low scoring games. Their offense has been completely content with playing conservatively and playing the field position game. I think they'll win this one by a touchdown in a low scoring game. I do have an official play on this one, which is Ole Miss's team total under 24.5. But I'll lay it here with the best defense in the land.
All right, obviously I'm on the other side. I'm taking the Land Sharks plus the 4.5. Let me ask you this question, Duck. Name the top 2 offenses that Oklahoma has stuffed this season. Just, off the top of your head, who would you say are the top offenses that they have faced?
Well, we'll probably have to say Texas and Auburn.
Yeah, that's not a great top 2. I mean, Auburn, we know basically that the book has been written on Jackson Arnold, and then Arch Manning has struggled against everyone this season, I think with the exception of Sam Houston. I mean, South Carolina last week playing, the broken offense there in Columbia. I look at this and I think their defense is legit. I think their numbers are in this rarefied air because they're not playing against quarterbacks who have a lot of experience or offenses that are fully functional. And then when I just break down the quarterback matchup, what material are we going to get for the Sooners? Because we don't really know at this point. He was severely limited coming off of injury against Texas. He throws 3 interceptions. I think everyone just applauded him for being gritty and trying to play through it. But then he comes back against South Carolina. He's a check down merchant, no rushing upside. That I don't think is going to cut it against this Ole Miss offense that I do think is going to score points. I mean, Chambliss had 305 total yards and 3 touchdowns. He got Ole Miss up by 11 in the fourth quarter against Georgia, and his defense couldn't get any stops to pull out the win. I think this guy is somebody that can basically improvise and be a red zone weapon. You saw it, with him getting in the end zone against Georgia. I'm willing to take the points just for the fact that my numbers have this as Oklahoma -1, -1.5. So to get over that key number of 3 and even the key number of 4 to a certain degree, I think there's too much value to pass up there for an Ole Miss team that if they get one turnover, one fluky fumble, all of a sudden they beat Georgia. And what's the narrative on them at this point? It's that they're the third best or second best team in the entire country. And people are taking, everything they're doing offensively as gospel. It's whatever Lane can do and whatever he puts out there, it seems to be working. Chambliss, I just love this kid. I think he's a playmaker, and he's also a playmaker off script. I think Oklahoma with Venables will be able to take away a lot of their favorite things that they want to do, and it's going to be on Chambliss to improvise and make things happen. Even the best defensive coordinators in the entire country, they always say it, you go in with this game plan, but you can't game plan for a true mobile quarterback who just improvises when things break down. So with that being said, I'll take the points. I think Oklahoma, in terms of the outright winner, probably is the right side here, but I think this is going to be a really tight game. And I also have the out of, if Mateer really can't play the way he did pre-injury, what kind of cap does that put on the Sooners offense? I think something to consider there. If I get this one, I'm knocking on the door. I'll be at your 5-yard line. If not, I feel like we could be headed for a draw by season's end, but we'll see if I can cash this in the red zone. It's all about finishing drives here on the Group of 5 Deep Dive. All right, that'll do it for the episode. Thanks for listening. This has been the Group of 5 Deep Dive Under the Big Bets on Campus banner, presented by DraftKings. Thanks as always for tuning in. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to the pod. I'm going to go ahead and pick out a 5-star review and give out a future for the rest of the 2025 season. So please keep them pouring in. You can say whatever you want, just a 5-star review. Bonus points if you throw anything directly related to the Group of 5 Deep Dive. And remember, if you want to tail the bets that you heard in today's episode, there are quick slip links to make it as easy as possible for you. They are embedded in the episode description. You can also go to actionnetwork.com/betnow. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Search for BBOC, subscribe, like, comment. It'll help us get more exposure for the brand. Check out our guy Stuckey on the favorites every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And as always, Stuckey and Colin will have their full Week 9 preview on Thursday, so be sure to be updating your podcast feed. You want to get the best bets at the best numbers. Thanks for listening to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. And as always, best of luck with all your bets.